Well, Brian Wang has been out and about. He's been in Denver all last week. I'm trying to locate him. I keep putting him up on the list down there in the description below where I list all the shows that are coming up. And I put him up on Wednesday. I put him up on Thursday. But no, Brian was having way too much fun in Denver finding out about nuclear fusion. Brian, thrilled to have you back in town and ready to talk to us.
Yeah, great to be back.
Okay, great. So you're telling me that, I saw the news. I think everybody saw the news that Microsoft has actually entered into contract to receive a bunch, 50 megawatts?
50 megawatts, yeah.
50 megawatts of energy from a nuclear fusion company in 2028?
2028, yes.
2028. Well, so are we that close to really actually having nuclear fusion as a commercially viable thing?
I would say maybe. For that company, they're super confident. Do they have any public information that would say for sure this is going to happen? No. They have videos. I've talked to them a few years ago. Directly, these people who are working on that.
Help the folks understand your background in nuclear fusion, that this is something that you are very focused on.
Right. So, my website, Next Big Future, 2 million views a month, and been running it for almost 20 years. Right. And then before that, I was always passionate about the future. Even high school, university, I'd go to the library, read all the journals and all that kind of stuff on everything, space, energy, all that stuff. So nuclear fusion is something that, I've followed closely for 10, 15 years for my site about, all future technology, right? And also all the advanced nuclear fission stuff, along with space, quantum computers, and everything else, right? So like I've talked to a lot of the companies. So I've tracked over 40 companies, the top 3 or 4 of which are getting money in the billion plus range. Helion's kind of like number 3 in terms of how well it's funded, Helion Energy. They're up in Washington. And so Washington University, they've made 6 reactors. They have over $600 million in funding. And they have a guarantee for if you do something, X, not revealed, but basically if you're ready to go commercial, do some stuff that proves that you're ready to go commercial. Some funders said another $1.5 billion, right? $1.5 billion to make your reactor. So I follow also closely. I've talked to many of the people involved in all of these things directly. So last talked to them a few years ago. Since they got their $500 million plus, they don't talk to me anymore. Unfortunately, they should, but they don't. So their email, I sent them some stuff. Whatever, they don't talk to me, but they publish stuff on YouTube. The thing is, they should talk to me clearly because like Elon listens to my stuff. So
that's right.
But anyway, so the history of nuclear fusion is that people know about the International Tokamak Project, which was started by Ronald Reagan and I think Gorbachev back almost 40 years ago. So that one is the donut version, right? Where you make it, you get your plasma, this 100 million degree stuff, and then you get magnets and you hold the donut shape, and then that would generate power, right? And that's the International Tokamak Project, which the ITER project, they spent over $10 billion, probably $20 billion. You're on thousands of PhDs working on it, supposedly holding this 100 million degrees, but in order to generate power, like a nuclear power plant, a regular fission one, generates power 90% of the time in the United States. Some of the ones in other countries only do 70, 80% of the time for a year, right? So that means, 35 million seconds, you're doing it of the year. I'm doing it for 33 million seconds of the year, right? But the donuts have only held power for 10 seconds, 2 minutes, in some configurations. So, not much of this full time. But they say, no worries. When we actually try and do this thing, we're going to over-engineer this thing and it'll hold for all this time. We haven't done it, but trust us, we'll do it. Anyway, so Helion Energy, the one that got the Microsoft deal and also a Nucor steel deal, the biggest steel company in the United States, they say they'll generate 500 megawatts in 2030, right? So these guys, they make the donuts, 2 donuts in each end of a smaller reactor being 4 to 6 end-to-end semis, right? And then
similar in size to, so
right.
Each reactor is the size of 4 to 6 semis?
Right. It's parked end-to-end.
Parked
right.
end-to-end.
So longer, roughly the same dimension of it. And then they will generate on either end these plasma donuts, right? But then they generate for a fraction of a second, and then they use magnets, to, because they're charged, to smash them together at roughly supersonic speed, right? So they take donuts, generate for a fraction of a second, slam them together, and then when they get together, that's when they generate power, right? They've made 6 of these type reactors over the years. Once every 2 to 4 years, they've made them, right? So they've shown they can make these things of that size, like making a small submarine, like a U-2 boat, the German boats, whatever, or like a small airplane, right? Not small airplane, but single aisle, 2x2 seat, whatever plane, roughly the same kind of complexity and size of these devices, right? So they're working on reactor 7 and reactor 8 now. And they have videos saying that they're going to do stuff. So they've supposedly done hundreds, if not 1,000 shots with the version 6 reactor and gotten good results. They think they've gotten 10 keV, 10,000 electron volts, or whatever, out of each of these smashing things. So then they need to go with number 7 to far more frequent firings, maybe 100,000 a year or something like that, so roughly once an hour or something. And they will also generate helium-3, which is on the moon and had not been generated other places. They say they're going to do that.
Is there a special use case for helium-3?
Helium-3 is one of the best materials for doing fusion.
Oh, okay.
So there's different materials. So there's DT fusion, DD fusion, proton boron, and helium-3. Those are the 4 main classes of materials. Most people are going for DT, deuterium tritium, lowest temperature, easiest thing to do, right? All very difficult. Obviously, we've been trying for decades to try and do this thing. DT is the lowest temperature thing to get to. The other ones, like proton boron, need 10 times more temperature, right? So we're already having trouble getting this one, 100 million degrees, and maybe a billion degrees. But there's reasons why you'd go to that. One of them being that the T part of that, DT, is tritium. That does not occur in nature. You must make it. Right? So how do we make it now? There's the Canadian can-do nuclear fission reactors, heavy water reactors. Those can make tritium, right? But only 2 kilos per year per reactor or something like that. So we have 20 kilos total. There are other ways to make tritium, accelerated and other things, and we have it because you put it into your nuclear bombs and they make them 100 times more powerful.
I see.
The reason that the Hiroshima bomb only had 10 kilotons of explosive because you didn't have enough tritium. When you stick enough tritium in it, then you get your nice 500 kiloton bomb that we have today, right? Needing your tritium. So the U.S. military has a source of tritium, but for reactors, you need, again, for these fusion reactors, you need some more tritium. Anyway, so you have to make your tritium, and you make a lot of it for a commercial nuclear fission reactor. Although most of the commercial ones of the 40 companies will say that they will breed it, meaning that they'll use reactions, generate it, and then they'll capture it and then shove it back in.
I see. Is that the same idea with the helium then? Is that they will generate the helium and then reuse the helium in the reactor?
Right. They will generate their helium-3 and then use it in their reactor.
I see.
So nuclear beyond chemistry is like alchemy, and that you can generate stuff. I can, not just put, hydrogen, oxygen, have them have a weak binding together. I'm knocking neutrons, protons off of things, adding neutrons and protons off of things. So I'm just changing stuff from one thing to another completely. I can turn my lead into gold kind of thing because I'm messing with the core, of the atom, right? I'm putting stuff on and off it. So thus they can say they can make helium-3. No one else has done it. They say they can. The next reactor is going to do it. So
now are they saying though that they're already using helium-3 as the feedstock? No. So they're generating some helium-3, but they're not at least claiming that they're using that right now to be the
in reactor 6. They have not said that they're generating helium-3. They have not said that they're going to do it. Although maybe they did it in small quantities, but they have not published a paper saying that they've done it. They've gone more secretive on that. Maybe they've shown that to the people who have given them, a $500 million plus 1.5 billion ready to go, or maybe they've shown that to them. Maybe they show that to Microsoft. Maybe they show that to Nucor Steel. Right? I have not seen those results. Presumably, those results are pretty darn good for all this happy stuff to be happening to them in terms of funding, in terms of deals, right? But to us, we don't see it, and they're not publishing papers on it.
Okay.
But they say that they're going to do these things where reactor 7 is going to be 100 times better and generate helium-3. Reactor 8 being built at the same time is also going to be better, which is surprising because normally you say, I'm going to make reactor 7 100 times better.
Right.
I'm going to finish that, test it a little bit, and then I'll make reactor 8. Yeah. But they're like stacking it up. So, okay.
In my little pea brain, this is just almost beyond my capability to even contemplate. It sounds to me like in order for them, that reactor 7 and reactor 8, et cetera, each one of those has to be able to fire more frequently and either use less incoming energy or have a better ability to create more energy on the outside in order to get it to a commercial level. So you have input of X number of joules. Okay. Yep. And now you have output of X number of joules. But if it's you mentioned in the green room before we started that there was a certain ratio that they're hoping for. But in addition to that ratio of ever how many times more it needs to generate, it also needs to not just do it for a second out of a day. It needs to do it like all the time or something like that. So this is, did I get that right? Am I close?
Right. So if number 6 had done 600 shots or 700 shots, last year, 365 days in a year, you're roughly averaging about 2 per day, right? In order to generate your 50 megawatts, you probably need to be shooting once every 10 seconds.
I see. Okay.
So from once every 12 hours to 6 times a minute, 360 times an hour, right? Or 4,000 times faster than what number 6 did, right? Somewhere between, to 7 to 8 to 9, they're going to be dialing it up the rate up 4,000 times in order to do that. And to get to the 500, they probably need to do it 40,000 times. They need to probably do it like once a second, 10 times a second, something in order to get up to that number, right? So they're going to get more power out of it. Instead of 10 keV, maybe get 100 keV, right? That's the kind of more power, faster has to happen, which, they seem to think will be, no problem. And
just a matter of engineering at this point, continuously improving the layouts, the mirrors, the utilization of the chemical
every component there are, right? So they are saying it's mostly engineering. Clearly, there's science involved because it's stuff that had not happened yet, or they haven't published it. If they at least are doing some helium-3 in number 6, that would mean less of a science thing. There's still science to say I'm generating a little to generating a lot. Because like I said, I went to this conference and there's huge gaps between I'm generating a little, I think it's going to work, my models say it's going to work, and then actually doing it, right? But they seem to think that, it's relatively engineering and
And what about the other part, the part about the amount coming in, the amount of energy that it takes to make these collisions happen compared to the amount of energy coming out that is usable?
Right. So for all these things, there's how I generate, in this case, the energy donuts and kind of stuff. There's a lot of inefficiencies, right? I'm firing up magnets and power is coming in. It's not 100% efficient. Heat is coming off, X-rays are going away. So whatever you're losing there, you need to get it back and more when you're getting it out. And also, if I'm slamming it together and if I'm generating it via heat, like a coal plant or something like that, those things are max 30, 40%, 45% efficient. If you have a really nice high temperature, you can do 45% efficient on there. So, there's, you have to get some number, some like 10-to-1, 6-to-1, at least. For the later ones, they'll lose even more power. You need to get 100-to-1, right? So depending on what type of fusion you're doing, you need to have these higher rates. So in order to, not just like I'm hitting it, I'm getting back twice as much power as I got. I need to have more margin in order to lose more stuff in all the stuff I'm doing in order to keep generating power.
Got it. And again, this would apparently, according to what we know, which is not that much because they're not producing papers, is they just believe that they can engineer their way to these. Now that they have the basic concept down, they think it's just engineering to get it to the place where it would be efficient enough to make a good energy source.
Right. They're only needing to generate, according to their thing, like going from 10 keV up to 50 or 100 keV. And then, so the power per shot is not like 1,000 times. Some of these other things saying, okay, I can get me 1,000 times. Theirs, Helion, is, if they're claiming they're correct, that they're already doing 10 keV, maybe they only need to go 5 times, 10 times more, and they have their commercial system. They probably can get away with 50 keV. But then it's the rate for them that is clearly not proven, and they need to go up 4,000 times. But 4,000 times the rate, maybe that is engineering. Maybe that is just, I need to make these magnets do this. I need to have the switches and whatever do that. And then it's, it's like going from a cannon to a minigun, right? Yeah. Right. So, okay, I got the cannon to work. Maybe the minigun's not that big of a step, right?
Right.
Maybe it can be the machine gun that can fire like 10,000 rounds.
Especially with artificial intelligence. I mean, yes. I'm certain that probably plays into it as well. Okay, so now here's my big question. Here's the big overarching question. And you and I might have talked about this months ago. We know that solar power, along with batteries, is an almost free future solution. I mean, it's a current solution at the lowest amount of cost that you can put. Fast, efficient, easily deployable, almost anywhere on Earth. They've even got one now in the South Pole, I guess. Yep. So they can deploy it anywhere on Earth. They can get results that are extremely efficient. Other than the pure science, why is there a benefit to this fusion approach?
Because of things like winter, cloudy days, really long-term cloudy days, winter, and also volcanoes and wildfires and stuff, right? So I can have a region like New York or something like that, where the winter is cloudy almost all the time. So I'm getting virtually nothing out of my solar. So, and then I could have an event like Mount Pinatubo blow up, right, and then clouds can come over, like the ash stuff can come over, and my power generation goes and takes a big freaking nosedive, right? So, and then there were the wildfires in Canada, wildfires in California, where for weeks, the amount of power you're generating is way down. Like I have solar on my roof. I'm getting, very little during winter, December, January in California, right? Yes. And California is the best at it. Yes. They're still getting 10 times less power during December and January. The Tony Seba thing is, okay, we'll just make 6 times more and all that kind of stuff. But that is 6 times more during normal situations. I don't think they've done the what about the once a decade, once 100 year events, right? Because I need power, especially if I'm going to the whole system. Yeah. Right now, with that, okay, 10% of it, if we drop off, from 100% to 90%, I still have everything else going. People can, economize and okay, don't use so much power and blah blah blah. We lost 10%.
Right.
But if I've gone to solar and batteries doing 80% of my work, right? Then if that drops to 8% instead of 80, now I was depending upon that, right? So that's the issue of needing safe, reliable, working all the time stuff.
So even then, if I take that into consideration, I'm going to use an analogy here. We got this again. We go back to California, which has these periodic droughts. We know they're coming. So we don't even have to guess. We know that every 6 years or every 5 years, we're going to have a year drought, or we'll have a 2-year drought. Sometimes we'll have a 3-year drought. And during those times, it's hard to get everybody enough pure water, enough clean water, and we have to take showers together. And if it's mellow, if it's yellow, it's mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. I mean, we've been through all this over the years, but we don't build desalinization plants. We have, but then like the one in Santa Barbara, they mothballed it because they weren't using it enough. So is a fusion plant overkill for the once in a decade problem where there's a volcano or wildfires or some other thing? Is there better ways, or more efficient, less expensive ways to solve that issue than a fusion plant?
So I think that, one, you can have fusion plants mixed with fission plants. Fission plants already provide 16% of the power that we have.
1/6?
1/6, yeah. Used to be more, used to be like 20, 25%, but we haven't been building them for a long time, so it's kind of been slowly dropping down, right? But if you make the right fusion plant and it makes a lot of neutrons for you, you can take all of the uranium-238, which is 95% of the nuclear waste by mass, and then I can cause those things to fission, right? To split them. Because right now the problem is that 238, that's even number. If you have odd number, you can split it. Uranium-235, plutonium-259, they all split, odd number, right? But if you hit it 100 times harder, then it still splits. So if you're generating the right neutrons, fast neutrons, you can make that stuff split, right? And then we have about 3 million, 5 million tons of that stuff. We're using 60,000 tons a year, right? So we got 3 million of that. So instead of making that, mountain, whatever storage thing that they're talking about, you have to use it as fuel, right? So one, you can make the fusion stuff and then combine it, or you can make it mass fission reactors and combine it to use the stuff that you're supposedly having trouble with and use it as fuel. That's one, right? And then the other thing is that we will need a lot more power.
Right.
All the stuff of like, we're planning for no growth, which is what the US and Europe have had, right? Is if you're comparing a fictional country A with the United States and Europe, fictional country A has 100,000 kilowatts per person, kilowatt hours per person, or 1 million kilowatt hours per person, versus our measly 10,000, 20,000 kilowatt hours per person, right? That's like the poor countries in Africa and whatever like that, or Mexico, with 500 watts, 20 times difference.
Yeah.
So we can be 20 times richer. Yeah. Everyone can become richer, right? 100 times richer if we have more power, right? And Elon has said that the AI data centers will need 10 times more power, right? Because they're going to generate so much profitability that we're going to need all that power, that we will want it, right? We're going to pay for this extra stuff because of all the magic that AI data centers can do for us, right? Yeah. So now we need more power, right? So the static, we're going to save and conserve and not generate any CO2 and blah, 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 and then run along at that thing. Yes, okay, from in terms of like not generating all this stuff with fossil fuels, that's the great alternative. But you're comparing to the society where you have nuclear fusion, all the solar and batteries. I'm doing 10 times, 20 times more power. You're going from today to we become, the future Africa with low power if we stay at this low level. If we go to 20 times, then we have all this extra power and doing stuff, right? So that's the difference of we can be rich or we can choose to, not generate the power and do stuff. So that's why do we need nuclear fusion? Why do we need a lot more solar and battery? Because we can be rich. We can have 10 billion, 100 billion people generating clean power on Earth, and we can then go around the solar system and do stuff, right? So it's a choice of, do we want to stay like this for 200 years or less or worse? Or do we want to say, screw that, we're going to have something that can make Star Trek and all that stuff look like crap, and we're going to be buzzing around the solar system doing stuff, right? So that's why do we need it? Because I need a nuclear fusion powered spaceship.
There you go.
A Starship with its chemical rockets going at 1,000 times slower. I don't want that. I want
fusion.
I want fusion, right? All that Mr. Fusion stuff from Back to the Future, the flying train, that's what you can do. The helicarrier on, Marvel MCU, you could do that with fusion, right? I can also do that with really good molten salt fission reactor. But, that's the kind of thing where if I got a lot of power, I can do magical stuff. So if I want to stay mundane, scraping by with solar power, clean, whatever, eating vegetables and stuff like that, okay, I can do that. But if I want really good future high-tech stuff, I need a lot more power. 10 times, 100 times more power, and then all around solar system.
So it sounds like a next big future.
Yes, it is.
And everybody that's not signed up, if you're not going in and checking out Next Big Future, you should be doing that. And of course, you should be supporting Brian on Patreon too, so he can keep his eyeballs on all of this for us, because we don't have time to dig into this. Brian, thanks for being on board. I think I almost sort of get it.
Great.
All right. For all of you out there, as always, it's been great talking to you.